everyone, welcome back to my channel, and if you're new, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Trish. I am an ambulatory wheelchair user, and I use this channel to share what my day-to-day life is like. In my last video, I did a deep dive into what my journey in life has been like. I started all the way back in 2009 when I first got sick. So if you haven't watched that yet, go ahead and watch that first. I'll drop a link down below because a lot of this won't make any sense if you don't watch that video first. I had to break it down in two parts. I just thought it'd be too long, and this is also an extremely emotional thing for me. It's really hard to sit down and remember the absolute worst parts of my life. Most of my 20s was a disaster. I almost died several times. I got misdiagnosed with things. Really, modern medicine as a whole really failed me for a long time. And I want to get that story out there only because it's not uncommon. Lots of people get undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, they get ignored. It happens so often. So the last video I ended with talking about how I passed out in the parking garage of a hospital and my mom got me into the car and took me to the ER in another hospital. That really was the best thing she could have done. I am so thankful she did that. I am so just thankful for my mom. Once I got to that ER, I was seen probably the fastest I've ever seen by an ER doctor. I got in the back really fast. They ran blood tests, they did an EKG, all that good stuff. And we knew pretty quickly that they would be admitting me. Again, I had a huge potassium deficiency and it had impacted my heart. And that had happened before. But this time we knew the cause. I had a feeding tube that wasn't working. I wasn't able to use it because it wasn't the right type of feeding tube. So they got me stabilized. I remember doctors, well, they were residents, but they are doctors, being in my room almost all night, monitoring me. Once they got me stable, they did put in the J-tube. I woke up from the surgery pretty rough. It was a combination, I think, of just how painful the surgery was and a medication they had given me during surgery kind of didn't set well with me. Eventually, it got better. I had a way to get nutrients. I was excited. I was sure things were looking up. Wasn't the case. Things were not looking up. I didn't know it then, but we were entering the darkest of days. That J-tube was held in by stitches. It didn't have a button or anything. I don't know why. And it never healed right. The stitches would eat through my skin and nobody could explain why that was happening. Now I know, and I'll get to that towards the end of the video. But I didn't know then, neither did anybody else. It kept getting infected. In between infections, at some point, this is all a whirlwind. I ended up getting the brain tumor I mentioned in the last video removed. And that was the easiest surgery that I had ever gotten. And I always laugh because I feel that says a lot. That I think having a pretty large brain mass removed from my head was the easiest thing that I went through during this time period. But I got that taken care of. One of the infections I got, and I can't even remember if it was the J-tube or I had a PICC line at the time. But regardless, one of the infections ended up in a pretty massive staph infection, and I had to have IV antibiotics at home, and I actually ended up going into kidney failure at that time. So as if, a not functioning stomach wasn't enough. Then I was facing my kidneys not working. Thankfully, they were able to reverse it for the most part, and I did not have to go on dialysis or anything. But that sticks out as part of my journey that was just incredibly scary, just not knowing. Waiting to see if, what they were going to do would work. So at some point after that, the J-tube started leaking fluid. It was stomach acid. It was disgusting. It was burning the skin around me. And there is going to be gross parts of this video. I guess I should have said that earlier. So if things like this gross you out, this might not be the video for you. Eventually, they decided the best course of action would be to take the J-tube out. They thought it would heal up if they took it out, and problem solved. It just created more problems. I had no way to eat, so they had to start me on TPN. TPN did not agree with my body very well, and the hole did not close. And I talk a lot in the last video about being sent home with no answers. It happened again. They took it out, said, best of luck, here you go, and sent me home. And literally anytime I tried to drink anything, it squirted out the hole. Sorry, this is so gross. This is so gross, but this is what happened. All the doctors I saw are like, that's pretty gross, but didn't want to do anything about it. I'm thinking this is what's going to kill me. Like, I had no idea how we were going to get past this. I was changing dressing. I was using cream. We tried an ostomy bag at one point just to hold all the disgustingness. Like, nobody knew what to do. It didn't seem to matter which hospital I went to. Nobody could help me. Finally, one of my mom's friends said she knew a surgeon and she told him about it and he thought he could help. So I went in for a consultation, and unfortunately this man has since passed on, but he was the most amazing surgeon. He saved my life. He really did. I would not be here making this video if it wasn't for him. Not only did he think he could fix the hole, but he thought he could fix my stomach. He told me there were no guarantees, but that if I didn't do it, I would probably be dead within the next year. And I had no doubt about that. I knew the situation was dire. I knew we had to try. He was going to go in, he was going to stitch up the hole. He was going to do what was called at the time a gastric jejunoscopy, and it was like a funnel in my stomach, so the food went straight into my small intestines, which do work. And he was going to remove anything that may have been damaged by that J-tube. So it was a very long surgery. He got me in there very quickly. I did it right around Easter time, and to be honest, I can't even tell you what year that was, because the time just all blended together. It's not like I was able to do anything. I was just home for a few days, maybe my grandma's for a few days, in the hospital. So the time all meshes together during that time period. It was a very long surgery. The healing process took a long time. It took so long that I was no longer allowed to stay in the hospital because my insurance is like, well, that's enough of that. So I went to a nursing home and they were able to give me IV antibiotics because I did get an infection while I was in there. I would get infections very easily. And they did some PT and some OT. I don't know the words to describe what it's like being in your early 20s in a nursing home. It was a heartbreaking experience. It was the most lonely experience of my illness. Hospitals are one thing, but the nursing home was a totally different animal. I don't think the staff believed I was as sick as I was, so they really wouldn't help me. I had to keep struggling to get help, getting dressed, all that. It was just all rough. My family came to visit me. My mom came to visit me every day. It was close to where she worked, but it still felt so lonely. I feel deeply for older people that get stuck in nursing homes because they're not great. It was something I needed. I needed that extra time to heal, and I couldn't stay in the hospital, but it was really not good. I'm thankful that I don't remember all of it, but I remember how lonely and frustrating it was. But with all that being said, once I finished healing, I got to start on like pureed foods, baby food type foods, and I moved up and I could eat again. So the doctor did indeed fix my stomach. I was able to eat small portions again. Now I couldn't eat like meat or anything, but I could eat chicken. I couldn't eat like red meat. So I could eat chicken, I could eat vegetables, I could eat potatoes. I was no longer dependent on the tube feed. So things were going better, but they still weren't great. There was still a lot of mystery symptoms, a lot of swelling, joint pain. I was like zoning out and having like hours lost, and I didn't know who I was, where I was. So I have no idea how this happened, but I ended up in the large hospital that put in my J-tube again. And that trip changed my life. It put me in the right direction. Rheumatology came in and they said, hey, we don't think you have lupus. You've been on these medicines for a long time. You're getting worse. We're going to take you off of them. And that terrified me, but also I didn't think I had lupus either because I wasn't getting better. That was the first time I heard the term mitochondrial disease. I had no idea what that was. They sent in a doctor, and this doctor actually normally did not see people in hospital, only in clinic, but he came to talk to me, and we got some testing started. It turns out that I have a mitochondrial dysfunction. I have a gene that does not produce enough CoQ10 in my body. Being on Cellcept and other lupus medications was the worst thing I could have done. I went to like a rehab facility after that hospital stay, trying to get stronger. It didn't really take at that point, but I followed up with that doctor, and I kept following up, and he put me on medication for mitochondrial myopathy, and he started me on a vitamin regimen, I can't say that word, that I am still on today. And that is when things started looking up for me finally. I got stronger and stronger. I still had a lot of struggles, and there were some miscellaneous surgeries thrown in there, but I started to finally be able to form a new normal. And I am like 26 at this point. Most of my adult life I had been living in hospitals, and I finally got some relief. I was overjoyed. We could finally start our life because I got sick less than a year into my marriage. So our marriage was spent in hospitals, and we finally got to do a little traveling again. We could just kind of breathe. We ended up becoming parents. We welcomed our daughter through adoption, and I love motherhood. I absolutely do. I never thought it was going to be something I could do. But as much as things had improved, I still have a lot of limitations. I'm still a wheelchair user. I still have joint pain. I have trouble walking. I dislocate things a lot. So there was still a lot of mystery symptoms. I have POTS. I have gastroparesis. And although I can eat again, it still flares up a lot. So life did not return to normal by any means. I'm always going to be disabled. But my story wasn't over just then. We had gotten into a new normal, but in 2022, I started to have an increase in symptoms again. My face was constantly blowing up. I thought it might be an allergy, so I went to an allergist. And thankfully, the allergist I found was very rare disease friendly. And he realized that I didn't have an allergy at all. I had pancreatic insufficiency. So since my body wasn't processing things it should, I was having like a reaction to undigested protein. He started medicine for that, but it led to more questions. Like, what is causing all these? So I have POTS, gastroparesis, pain. I have hypermobility so bad I can't walk. Like, what is causing all these? And that is when my gastroenterologist said, well, have you ever heard of EDS? And I said, yeah, I've heard of it. I have my suspicions, but nobody wants to diagnose me with it. So he said, well, find a good rheumatologist. And I did. I had quite the wait to find her, but in September of 2023, I finally saw her, and she was worth every minute of wait time. She really was. That day, she diagnosed me with EDS. If you don't know what that is, it's Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, and it's a genetic condition. It affects the connective tissue, and we're made of connective tissue, so it can affect the heart, the stomach, pretty much anything. And some people have very few symptoms, and some people have a lot of symptoms. I feel like I'm on an infomercial because it's like, oh, but wait, there's more. She had pulled up old x-rays that she could access on her computer, and she said that she saw things that weren't consistent with EDS, that she felt like I had an autoimmune arthritis. So she did blood work and x-rays, and then on my follow-up, she said, we can see evidence of alkalining spondylosis and probably either rheumatoid arthritis or psoriatic arthritis. And I still don't know which one. But she started me on Enbrel, and let me tell you, I have less pain than I've had in years. I had an extreme hard time sitting, which is unfortunate because I'm a wheelchair user, because I had bone spurs in my spine, like around my tailbone, and I have little tiny fractures throughout my spine. So the Enbrel is really helping. I have not noticed any increased mobility yet, but I'm hoping I'll get some in the future. The doctor said it could take up to a year for me to see the medicine's full effect. And she also said I might need additional medicine. After all these years, it turns out I do have an autoimmune disorder. They just got the wrong one. And finding out I had EDS was a relief. I now have a name for a lifetime of medical weirdness. And it's like a weight has been lifted. I cried, honestly. And it wasn't like sad tears, it was happy tears. And I don't know that someone who isn't sick would understand, but having a name for a lifetime of symptoms is amazing. It really is. I don't know if I'll ever not be disabled. I don't think so. At this point, I think I'm going to be disabled for the rest of my life. I think I'm going to need the wheelchair for the rest of my life. But I'm happy to know why. And I hope that, pursuing the autoimmune disorder will give me some more relief. I don't think I'll ever need the wheelchair, but I'd like to be able to walk around the grocery store again, because that's something I haven't been able to do in a very long time. So I would like to at least be able to go grocery shopping by myself without the wheelchair. I guess that's my goal. And that might not seem like a lot to you, but it would be a big deal for me. So there you have it. That is all the gory details. It was a long road. Lots of medical gaslighting, lots of misdiagnosis. But it was also a road of hope. I never gave up hope that I would get better. And although when I was at my sickest, I didn't picture myself, with a family doing the mom thing, I had always hoped I would get to do that. I could have never imagined that I'd be sharing it with all of you, but here we are with that too. Thank you so much for watching this. I know this got really long, and I know it got jumbled. It's jumbled in my head. I can't really make heads or tails of when things happened. And it was so long ago at this point. If you are new here, don't forget to hit like and subscribe. I do this almost every day, so I'll see you soon.